About 2 years ago, I moved into a new apartment. The walls were very thin, and because of the fire safety laws in my city, my bedroom had one window, which led into the living room, and none with the outside access. The window will be important later. It was 3 bedrooms, one for me, one for the master tenant, and one spare, which at the time was rented out by a pretty friendly guy. Well, friendly guy had issues with his work visa and had to move back to Canada last minute, leaving us about 2 weeks to find another roommate. Our quickest and easiest option was Craigslist. Due to my work schedule, I had no part in the selection process, but was content when the new roommate moved in a little later. He seemed a little bit off, but friendly. He was very tall, large guy, but pretty quiet, and not someone I wanted to go out of my way to hang with, but was okay to be around and be cordial with. About 2 weeks into his move-in, the master tenant left for Hawaii, leaving him and I alone in the home for the month-long duration of the stay. For the first few days, things are normal. All of a sudden, about 4 days into the trip, I am woken up about 8 AM to a frantic knocking at my door. Roommate, we call him Kyle, is standing there when I open it, looking frazzled. He looks me dead in the eye and says, "So, do you want me to tell what went on last night?" To which I was shocked and confused, because I had come home from work at about 9 PM and immediately showered and went to bed. I explained this to him, and he tells me that he heard me screaming and arguing with someone in my room, that he saw me in the side alley out of the window arguing with our landlord, whom I'd never even seen at that point, that he heard people coming in and out of our house. I tell him no way, none of that ever happened. After staring at me for a little longer, he leaves and doesn't bring it up again. The next morning, I wake up to the same thing. This time, he says he saw me arguing with my boyfriend. Well, I was single at the time. Had seen me talking with our other roommate, who's in Hawaii, and asking me for the badge number of the officer I'd spoken to, since he had apparently seen me talking to a bunch of police as well. This time, I got angry, and more or less told him to cut this out, because I'm not doing anything and don't know what he's talking about. He gets a weird look on his face and says, "I think I had seizures in my sleep. The next time it happens, call an ambulance," and leaves for a bit, only to start knocking about an hour later. And when I open up, Kyle repeats the exact same story, word for word. This happens once more before I tell him to leave me the hell alone and leave for work. I go to work as normal, and I am reluctant to return that night, but I'm too tired to switch to an alternative location. Big mistake. About 1 AM, I wake up to slamming doors. Kyle is pacing back and forth between his bedroom, the living room, and out the front door, walking in and out of each room, turning the lights on and off, mumbling angrily and slamming the doors. I can see his figure pacing back and forth through the frosted window in my room that leads to the living room. Since my room is dark, he cannot see inside. Suddenly, he screams, "I can't live like this. Why are you doing this to me?" I think he's on the phone and don't respond. A few moments later, he screams my name repeatedly, and I realize he's directing it towards me. I knew I had to get the hell out of there. So I very quietly creep out of bed and start getting dressed and packing a bag of clothes for work in the morning. I'm almost done when he screams, "I hear you," and charges over to my room, slapping the wall next to my door, but not touching the door itself. I look towards my window and see his shadow lean all the way forward, pressing his ear against the glass. I was so terrified and sat completely still, unmoving. he eventually screams my name again and moves away from the window. I hear him start pacing between rooms again. Now, my shoes are kept on a rack outside my door and not inside my room. So I know that when I leave, I'm going to need a moment to put them on. I decide to wait until his pacing takes him out to the front door again, at which time I plan to grab my shoes, put them on, and run. As I'm formulating this plan, the pacing stops, and he screams, "Do you want to fight about this? Come out right now, and I swear to God." Now, I'm very small, a 5-foot girl, and this guy is easily 3 times my size, so I am definitely not looking to fight thanks. After a few minutes, he turns off all the lights, and I hear the door to his room open and close, followed by silence. I wait for a moment to be sure I can't hear any movement, and then decide to take my chance. I took a breath and pulled my door open quickly. I step out and grab my shoes before I look up a second later and see him standing shirtless with just a pair of boxers and socks on in the dark of the hallway. His arms hung slightly outward in an awkward position. He says in a low, calm voice, "Ma'am, we need to talk." This was a hard no from me, so I grabbed my shoes and ran out the door with them in hand. I ran about half a block barefoot before stopping to put them on. When I look back, he is standing in the porch light of our front door, watching me run, but not moving. Luckily, I had a friend who lived 2 blocks away, and I had their spare key. So I let myself in and crashed there for the night. And that's where I stayed for the next week or so, while we worked things out with the master tenant, and Kyle agreed to move out within the week. He says he doesn't remember anything that happened, or wasn't sure if it was real or not. But if I said that's what went down, then it must be real. The day Kyle left, he sends me a photo of the house keys sitting on the table and says, "I'm out." Nothing else. I take a friend over there with me to scout it out and ensure that he has actually left. When we get there, we discover that not only had he left a ton of food and furniture, but he had ripped all of the fire alarms out of the ceiling. He had unscrewed and removed the deadbolt to the front door, and left them lined up neatly on the front table. We then realised that my front door can only lock by using a key from the outside, and it had been locked when we arrived, meaning Kyle still had a key. We called a locksmith immediately. Even after changing the locks, I was still terrified to stay there alone afterwards, and never went to sleep at night without barricading the doors with chairs and other furniture. To this day, I still fear for his safety. He was obviously psychologically unstable, but also wonder what could have happened if I hadn't been as lucky as I was.